The morning light spilled through the windows of Café Lumière, casting golden rectangles across the wooden floors. Sofia Martinez tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear and balanced 3 plates along her left arm, a skill that had taken months to perfect when she first started working here. "Table, 7's breakfast special," she announced, with a warm smile as she set down a plate of steaming eggs and toast in front of an elderly man who visited every Tuesday. He nodded without looking up from his newspaper. 3 years. Sofia had been working at this bistro for 3 years now. She knew the menu by heart, could recite the daily specials without checking the chalkboard, and had memorized the quirks of all the regular customers. Mr. Turner at table 7 always wanted his coffee refilled exactly twice, never 3 times. The couple by the window preferred their pastries warmed for 30 seconds, not a minute. The college students who camped out with laptops in the corner booth tipped generously if you didn't rush them away during busy hours. Sofia moved between tables with practiced ease, her black apron pockets heavy with pens, straws, and the occasional forgotten receipt. The morning rush kept her too busy to think about much beyond the next order, the next table to clear, the next smile to offer. And that was fine with her. It was comfortable, predictable. "You're moving like a robot again," said Danny, another waitress who had started 6 months ago. She bumped Sofia's hip playfully as they passed each other by the coffee station. "When was the last time you did something different? Took a day off? Went dancing? Kissed a stranger?" Sofia rolled her eyes. "Some of us enjoy stability, and paying rent on time. Stability is just another word for stuck," Danny said with a wink before whisking away with a tray of muffins. The comment shouldn't have bothered her, but it clung to Sofia like a burr as she continued her shift. Was she stuck? At 27, she had fallen into a comfortable routine. Apartment to cafe. Cafe to apartment. Occasional visits to her parents on Sundays. Streaming movies alone on Friday nights. It wasn't a bad life, just predictable. The lunch rush came and went. Sofia's feet ached in the sensible black shoes she wore for work. A family with 3 small children left a hurricane of crumbs and spilled juice in their wake. She cleaned it all with the resignation of someone who had seen much worse. "Sofia, can you stay late tonight?" She looked up to see Anton, the owner of Café Lumière, standing in the doorway to the kitchen. He was in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, which was often. He had opened the bistro 15 years ago after leaving his job as a corporate lawyer, a decision his family had thought was insane but one he never seemed to regret. "Sure," she said, because she always said yes. What else did she have to do? "Everything okay? I need to talk to you about something." And Paolo called in sick. Paolo was the bistro's pianist, a gray-haired Italian man who played soft jazz and occasional classical pieces during the dinner service. The piano sat in the corner of the cafe, an old upright that had been there longer than Sofia. "Do we have a backup?" she asked, already knowing the answer. Anton shook his head. "Not on short notice. We'll manage without music tonight, but I'd like to find someone to fill in while he recovers. His daughter says it might be a few weeks." Sofia nodded and returned to her tables. The afternoon crawled by, and with each passing hour she found herself glancing more frequently at the piano. It sat there like an old friend she had deliberately avoided at a party she had played once. Years ago, her mother had insisted on lessons from the time Sofia was 6 until she was 16, when her interest in boys and the social politics of high school had taken precedence. She hadn't touched a piano since leaving home for college, first because there wasn't one available in the dorm, and later because, well, what was the point? She had never been exceptional, just good enough to please her mother and win a few minor competitions at school. "Earth to Sofia," Anton said, waving a hand in front of her face. The cafe had emptied out during the lull between lunch and dinner. "Where did you go just now?" "Sorry," she said, blinking back to the present. "Just thinking." "About Paolo's replacement?" Anton asked, following her gaze to the piano. "What? No, you were staring at the piano like it might sprout legs and walk away." He tilted his head. "Do you play?" Sofia hesitated. "I used to. A long time ago." Anton's eyes lit up. "Really? How long?" 10 years of lessons. But I haven't played in almost a decade." 10 years is not something you forget entirely," Anton said thoughtfully. "Like riding a bike, maybe a bit wobbly at first, but it comes back." "I wasn't that good to begin with," Sofia protested, already seeing where this conversation was heading. Would you try? Anton asked. Just to see? We have 2 hours before dinner service, and Paolo's sheet music is still there. Sophia opened her mouth to say no, to list all the reasons why this was a terrible idea.
She wasn't a performer.
She was a waitress. A reliable waitress who didn't take risks or step outside her comfort zone. You don't have to decide about filling in for him today. Anton added quickly. Just play something, for me, for yourself. The kindness in his voice undid her. Anton had always been good to her, flexible with her schedule when she needed it, understanding when she made mistakes. He had created a warm place here, a place that felt more like home than her apartment sometimes. Okay, she said finally, but don't expect much. Anton beamed and gestured to the piano with a flourish. The stage is yours, Ms. Martinez. Sophia approached the piano slowly as if it might bite. She sat on the bench, adjusting it slightly, and lifted the key cover. The ivory keys were slightly yellowed with age, but clean and well-maintained. Paolo took good care of his instrument. She placed her fingers on the keys without pressing down, feeling their cool smoothness. What should she play? Her mind went blank. Then, almost without thinking, her fingers found the opening notes of Debussy's Clair de Lune, one of the last pieces she had mastered before quitting. The first notes were hesitant, a bit clumsy. She winced at a wrong note, paused, then continued. Gradually, her hands remembered what her mind had forgotten. The muscle memory returned, and the music began to flow more naturally. She closed her eyes, letting her fingers find their way across the familiar pattern. It wasn't perfect. She fumbled a few passages and simplified others she couldn't quite recall. But something inside her chest loosened as she played, some tight knot she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. When the final notes faded, Sophia opened her eyes to find Anton staring at her with an expression of wonder. You said you weren't good, he said quietly. That was beautiful. Sophia felt her cheeks warm. It was full of mistakes, and I had to fake my way through parts of it. Music isn't about perfection, Anton said, waving away her concerns. It's about feeling, and that made me feel something. Before she could respond, the bell above the door jingled as the first dinner customers arrived. Anton gave her shoulder a squeeze before going to greet them, leaving Sophia alone at the piano. She closed the key cover gently and stood up, straightening her apron. Her heart was beating too fast and her fingers tingled slightly. It had felt good to play again. Scary but good, like finding something she had misplaced long ago. As she returned to waitressing duties, taking orders and delivering plates, Sophia caught herself humming melodies she hadn't thought about in years. The customers at table 12 needed more water. The couple by the window wanted to know about dessert options. Everything was the same as it had been that morning, except it wasn't. Something had shifted ever so slightly, like the first hairline crack in a dam. Later that night, after closing, Anton approached her again as she counted her tips at the counter. Paolo will be out for at least 3 weeks, he said casually. His doctor wants him to rest after this bout of pneumonia. Sophia continued counting bills, not looking up. That's too bad. I hope he feels better soon. I was thinking, Anton continued, maybe you could fill in, just for the weeknights. They're quieter, less pressure. You could play whatever you feel comfortable with. Sophia finally met his gaze. I'm not a performer, Anton, I'm a waitress. Why can't you be both? He asked simply. Most artists have day jobs. And you clearly have talent that's been hiding under that apron. She laughed despite herself. One mediocre rendition of Debussy doesn't make me talented. You're selling yourself short, Anton said, more serious now. Just think about it, okay? Sleep on it. The piano will be here tomorrow. As Sophia walked home that night, the streets quiet and lit by street lamps, she found herself wondering what it would be like to sit at that piano again, this time with people listening. The thought made her stomach clench with anxiety. But there was something else there too. A tiny spark of excitement she hadn't felt in a long time. Her apartment greeted her with its familiar silence. She dropped her keys in the dish by the door, kicked off her shoes and padded to the kitchen for a glass of water. Her fingers tapped against the counter, playing invisible keys, remembering. Maybe Danny was right. Maybe stability was just another word for stuck. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to get unstuck. Sophia couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, her fingers twitched with half-remembered melodies. She tossed and turned, her mind racing with thoughts of the piano waiting for her at the bistro, Around 3 in the morning, she finally gave up and turned on her bedside lamp. She dug through her closet until she found it, a cardboard box labeled "Old Stuff" in her mother's neat handwriting. Inside, beneath yearbooks and dance recital programs, lay several worn piano books. She pulled them out one by one, flipping through pages yellowed with age. The notes like old friends she hadn't seen in years. When Sophia arrived at Café Lumière the next morning, her eyes were ringed with shadows, but there was a nervous energy in her step. She tucked the piano books into her bag, not quite ready to share them with Anton yet. She wasn't even sure if she'd have the courage to play again. The morning passed in a blur of coffee orders and breakfast plates. Sophia moved on autopilot, her mind elsewhere. Twice she mixed up orders, something she hadn't done in months. "You okay?" Danny asked, catching Sophia staring out the window with a coffee pot forgotten in her hand. "You seem a million miles away today." "I'm fine," Sophia said quickly. "Just didn't sleep well." Danny raised an eyebrow but didn't push further. As she walked away, Sophia heard the bell above the door chime. Anton entered, stamping snow from his boots. It was early December, and the first real snow of the season had fallen overnight. "Good morning," he called cheerfully. "How's my favorite staff today?" He made his rounds, checking in with the kitchen and chatting with regular customers. When he finally approached Sophia, his expression turned more serious. "Have you thought about my offer?" he asked quietly. Sophia busied herself wiping down an already clean table. "I have. And?" She sighed. "I brought some of my old music books. But Anton, I really don't think I can perform in front of people." His face lit up. "You brought music? That's wonderful. And don't think of it as performing. Think of it as creating atmosphere." He gestured around the bistro. "Most people are focused on their food, their conversations. The music is background, Sophia. Beautiful background. Put that way, it seemed slightly less terrifying. Maybe I could try just once. If it's terrible, we never speak of it again." Anton clapped his hands together. "Deal. How about tonight? Thursday evenings are usually quiet." "Tonight?" Sophia's stomach dropped. She'd been thinking more along the lines of next week, giving herself time to practice. "I haven't played in years, Anton. I need time to overthink it and talk yourself out of it," he finished for her. "Sometimes we need to jump before we're ready." Sophia wanted to argue, but a customer waved for her attention. By the time she'd handled their request, Anton had disappeared into his office, apparently considering the matter settled. The day crawled by with agonizing slowness. During her break, Sophia sat at the piano and quietly worked through some simple pieces from her old books, wincing at every mistake. Her fingers felt stiff and clumsy, nothing like the fluid movements she remembered from her youth. As the afternoon faded into evening and the dinner crowd began to trickle in, Sophia's anxiety grew. What had she been thinking? She couldn't do this. She was going to embarrass herself, embarrass Anton, ruin the atmosphere of the bistro. "Hey." Sophia jumped. Anton stood beside her, holding out a small glass of amber liquid. "Dutch courage," he explained with a smile. "Just a sip." She took the glass and swallowed a small amount, feeling the warmth of whiskey spread through her chest. "What if I mess up?" "Then you mess up," Anton shrugged. "The world keeps spinning. But you won't know unless you try." Sophia took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay, give me 10 minutes to get ready." She ducked into the bathroom, splashed water on her face, and stared at her reflection. "You can do this," she whispered to herself. "It's just background music. No one's even going to notice." When she emerged, she found Anton had moved the piano bench slightly, angling it so she could see most of the bistro while playing. He'd also placed a small vase with a single red rose on top of the piano. The gesture brought unexpected tears to her eyes. "Whenever you're ready," Anton said gently. "No pressure." Sophia settled onto the bench, arranged her music books, and took another deep breath. The bistro wasn't full, maybe 15 people scattered across 10 tables. No one was paying attention to the piano corner. That was good. She began with a simple piece, a Chopin nocturne she had played countless times as a teenager. Her hands shook at first and she hit several wrong notes, wincing each time. But gradually, as she focused on the music rather than the people, her fingers found their rhythm. The piece wasn't perfect, but it flowed, soft and melancholic in the warm light of the bistro. When she finished, there was no applause, exactly as Anton had promised. Just the continued murmur of conversation, the clink of silverware against plates. Sophia felt a curious mix of relief and disappointment. She moved on to the next piece, a gentle Mozart sonata. As she played, she began to relax. Her body remembered this feeling. The slight resistance of the keys, the way her wrists needed to stay loose, how her foot worked the pedal. It was like speaking a language she had forgotten she knew. After 45 minutes, Sophia paused, flexing her fingers. That's when she noticed him, an older man sitting alone at a table near the piano. Unlike the other customers, he wasn't eating or reading. He was listening, his eyes closed, a faint smile on his weathered face. When he realized she had stopped, his eyes opened. "Please," he said quietly, "don't stop on my account." Sophia felt her cheeks warm. "I was just taking a short break." "Your Chopin was lovely," he said, "though I particularly enjoyed your interpretation of the Mozart." "Thank you," she replied, surprised that he could identify the composers. "I'm very rusty." "Music is not about technical perfection," the man said, echoing Anton's words from the day before. "It's about what you bring to it. Your emotion comes through clearly." Before Sophia could respond, Anton appeared with a glass of water for her. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Better than I expected," she admitted, "though I think my fingers will be sore tomorrow." "Like riding a bicycle," Anton grinned. "Except your hands do the pedaling." Sophia laughed and turned back to the piano. For her final set, she chose music she knew by heart. A simple piece she had composed herself during her last year of lessons. It wasn't sophisticated or complex, but it was hers. As she played the familiar melody, memories washed over her, sitting at her parents' piano after school, working out each note, the satisfaction when a phrase finally sounded right. She had forgotten the joy of creating something, of expressing feelings that had no words when she finished. The older man who had spoken to her earlier was watching with an intensity that made her slightly uncomfortable. "That last piece," he said. "What was it?" "Just something I wrote a long time ago," Sophia replied, closing her music books. "Nothing special." "On the contrary," he said. "It was quite special. Do you have more of your own compositions?" Sophia shook her head. "No, I stopped playing after high school." The man looked genuinely disappointed. "That's a shame. You have a distinct voice." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, placing it on top of the piano. "My name is Thomas Rivera. I teach music at the university. If you ever change your mind about composing again, I'd be interested in hearing more of your work." He left before Sophia could respond, leaving her staring at the card in confusion. University professor? Interested in her simple little composition? It seemed absurd. Anton approached as she was gathering her music books. "So, how do you feel?" Sophia considered the question seriously. Her fingers ached slightly. She felt drained, but in a good way, like after a long hike or swim. And underneath it all was a current of satisfaction, pride. "I feel good," she said, surprised to find it was true. "It wasn't as scary as I thought it would be." Anton beamed. "Does that mean you'll consider playing again? Maybe make it a regular thing while Paolo recovers?" Sophia hesitated. Playing tonight had awakened something she thought she had left behind years ago. But it also brought questions, uncertainties. Could she really be both waitress and musician? Was she good enough? And why did that professor seem so interested in her amateur composition? "I'll think about it," she said finally, tucking the business card into her pocket. "Ask me again tomorrow." As she walked home that night, snow falling gently around her, Sophia found herself humming the melody of her old composition. But this time in her mind she heard new notes, new variations. For the first time in years, she wanted to sit at a piano and create. Her apartment didn't have a piano, but she did have an old keyboard in her closet, a gift from her parents when she left for college, one she had never unpacked. Tonight, Sophia decided, was the night to change that. 2 weeks had passed since Sophia's first night at the piano. 2 weeks of playing every evening, her confidence growing with each performance. She had established a routine, waitressing during the day, playing for 2 hours during dinner service, then returning home to work on her own compositions on the dusty keyboard she had finally unpacked. Tonight, the bistro was busier than usual. Sophia wiped down tables quickly, glancing at the clock. 15 minutes until she needed to be at the piano. Her fingers itched to play. She had worked out a new piece last night, a gentle melody that had come to her while falling asleep. It wasn't polished yet, but she was eager to hear how it sounded on a real piano rather than her electronic keyboard. "Your fan club is here again," Danny whispered as she passed by with a tray of empty glasses. Sophia followed her gaze to a table near the piano where Professor Rivera sat with two other people, a woman with short gray hair and a younger man with glasses. They had been coming regularly for the past week, always sitting close to the piano, always staying for her entire performance. "They're not my fan club," Sophia muttered, embarrassed. "Professor Rivera just likes music." Danny rolled her eyes. "Right. That's why they show up exactly when you start playing and leave when you finish. Face it, Sophia. You have groupies now." Sophia shook her head and continued cleaning, but she couldn't help feeling a flutter of pride. It was strange to think that people might be coming to the bistro specifically to hear her play. Strange, but not unpleasant. At exactly 7 o'clock, Anton nodded to her from behind the counter. It was time. Sophia tucked her order pad into her apron pocket, smoothed down her shirt, and made her way to the piano. As she settled onto the bench, she noticed Professor Rivera give her a small wave. The woman with him leaned forward, watching Sophia with curious eyes. Sophia nodded politely in their direction, then turned her attention to the piano. She began with a piece by Eric Satie, gentle and dreamy. As always, the first few minutes were the hardest, being conscious of people listening, worrying about mistakes. But soon the music carried her away, and she forgot to be nervous. When she moved on to her own composition from high school, the one Professor Rivera had commented on, she saw him lean toward his companions, speaking quietly. They nodded, eyes fixed on Sophia's hands. After nearly an hour of playing, Sophia paused for a short break. She flexed her fingers and took a sip of water from the glass Anton always placed on top of the piano for her. To her surprise, Professor Rivera approached. "Miss Martinez," he said warmly. "Another beautiful performance." "Thank you," she replied, still not entirely comfortable with the praise. "I'd like to introduce you to my colleagues," he continued, gesturing to the two people who had joined him at his table. "This is Dr. Constance Wu, chair of our music department, and Leo Ortiz, who runs our recording studio on campus." Sophia stood awkwardly, suddenly conscious of her waitress uniform and the faint coffee stain on her sleeve. "Nice to meet you." Dr. Wu shook her hand firmly. "Thomas has been singing your praises for days. I had to come here for myself." "I hope I didn't disappoint," Sophia said, wishing she had practiced more. "Quite the opposite," Dr. Wu replied. "Particularly your original pieces. They show remarkable intuition for someone without formal compositional training." Sophia blinked in surprise. "They're just simple melodies." "Simple isn't bad," Leo chimed in. "Some of the most enduring music is built on simple, powerful melodies. It's what you do with them that matters." Professor Rivera nodded, "Which brings us to why we're here. I've been telling my colleagues about your talent, and we'd like to make you an offer." Sophia glanced nervously at Anton, who was watching the exchange from behind the counter. He gave her an encouraging nod. "What kind of offer?" she asked cautiously. "The university hosts a showcase of local musical talent each spring," Dr. Wu explained. "We'd like you to perform. Nothing extravagant, perhaps 3 or 4 pieces, including your original compositions." Sophia's stomach tightened. Playing background music in a cozy bistro was one thing. Performing at a university showcase in front of an audience who was actually there to listen critically was entirely different. "I don't think I'm at that level," she said quickly. "I'm still making mistakes, and my original pieces aren't really—" "That's why we're talking to you now," Professor Rivera interrupted gently. "The showcase isn't until April. You have 4 months to prepare. And we can offer resources to help. Access to practice rooms, some coaching sessions, maybe even some basic instruction in composition if you're interested." Sophia's head spun with possibilities. 4 months was a long time, but between her full-time job and her already limited practice time at home, how would she manage it? "I need to think about it," she said finally. "It's a lot to take in." "Of course," Dr. Wu handed her a business card. "My direct line is on there. Call me when you've decided. But don't wait too long. We're finalizing the program in the next few weeks." They returned to their table, leaving Sophia standing by the piano, clutching Dr. Wu's card alongside Professor Rivera's in her pocket. Anton appeared at her side. "What was that about?" he asked, though his smile suggested he had overheard at least part of the conversation. "They want me to play at some university showcase," Sophia said, her voice hollow with disbelief. "That's amazing." Anton clapped his hands together. "Your big break." Sophia laughed nervously. "It's hardly a big break. It's just a small local event. Everything big starts with something small, Anton said wisely. Are you going to do it? I don't know, Sophia admitted. It's scary. And when would I practice? I'm here all day and my keyboard at home isn't great for serious preparation. Anton rubbed his chin thoughtfully. You could use the piano here in the mornings before we open. I'm usually here by 7 to do paperwork and prep. The bistro doesn't open until 9. You'd do that for me? Of course, Anton said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. You've brought something special to this place, Sophia. The least I can do is give you space to grow. Tears pricked at Sophia's eyes. Thank you. Anton patted her shoulder. Now finish your set. Your fans are waiting. Sophia returned to the piano with a strange mixture of excitement and terror swirling in her chest. As she played through her remaining pieces, her mind was elsewhere, imagining herself on a stage with bright lights, a room full of people listening, really listening to her music. The following morning, Sophia arrived at Café Lumière at 7 sharp. Anton was already there as promised, and he greeted her with a smile and a cup of fresh coffee. The piano awaits, Maestro, he said with a theatrical bow. Sophia spent 2 hours practicing, focusing on the rough spots in her classical pieces and working through variations of her own compositions. When she finished, her fingers were sore, but her mind was made up. She was going to call Dr. Wu and accept the invitation. The bistro opened as usual at 9, and Sophia switched from pianist back to waitress, taking orders and delivering food with practiced efficiency. Around lunchtime, a group of college students came in, laptops in tow, and settled in the corner booth. Hey, one of them said when Sophia came to take their order. Aren't you the piano player from the evenings? Sophia nodded, surprised to be recognized. Yes, that's me. You're really good, the student continued. My roommate recorded a bit of you playing last week and showed me. That's why we came today. Sophia froze. Recorded me? On video? Yeah, it's on her Instagram. It got a bunch of likes. Sophia finished taking their order on autopilot, her mind reeling. Someone had recorded her playing and put it online without asking? She felt oddly violated, as if something private had been taken from her. During her break, she searched Instagram with shaking hands. It didn't take long to find the video, a minute-long clip of her playing her original composition, filmed from a few tables away. The caption read, Hidden talent at Café Lumière. Yours discovered artist, pure beautiful music. The video had hundreds of likes and dozens of comments, all positive. People asking where the cafe was, who she was, whether she had music available anywhere else. Sophia sat down hard, her legs suddenly weak. This wasn't what she had signed up for. She had agreed to play background music in a small bistro, not to become some kind of social media discovery. When Anton found her, she was still staring at her phone, reading through comments from strangers. What's wrong? He asked, taking in her pale face. You look like you've seen a ghost. Sophia wordlessly handed him her phone. He scrolled through the post, his eyebrows rising. This is good publicity for the bistro, he said cautiously, noting her expression. But I understand if it makes you uncomfortable. I didn't want attention, Sophia said quietly. I was playing for myself, for the joy of it. Anton sat down beside her. Sometimes the world has other plans for us. The question is, what do you want to do now? You could ask them to take down the video, or what? Or you could embrace it. Take the university's offer, see where this path leads. Anton's eyes were kind. You have a gift, Sophia. Maybe it's time to share it with more than just our dinner guests. Sophia took back her phone, looking again at all the positive comments. Strangers who had connected with her music, who had felt something when they heard her play. Wasn't that what music was ultimately about? Connection? She thought of the business cards in her pocket, of the keyboard in her apartment that she now played every night, of the melodies that had started flowing through her mind again after years of silence. I need some time, she said finally, to figure out who I am now. Am I still just a waitress who plays piano on the side? Or am I becoming something else? Anton smiled. Why not both? The world is full of people who are more than one thing. As Sophia returned to work, delivering plates and refilling coffee cups, she felt as if she were standing on the edge of a diving board, terrified to jump, but knowing that staying where she was might be the bigger risk. A month had passed since the Instagram video. Sophia stood outside the university's music building, clutching her folder of sheet music and trying to calm her racing heart. After days of going back and forth, she had finally called Dr. Wu and accepted the offer to perform in the showcase. Now here she was for her first meeting with Professor Rivera to discuss her program. The building was larger than she expected, all gleaming wood and glass. Students hurried past carrying instrument cases and stacks of books. Sophia felt out of place in her jeans and simple sweater, like an imposter about to be discovered. "Sophia, you made it." Professor Rivera appeared in the doorway, his face lighting up with a genuine smile. He wore a tweed jacket with patches on the elbows, like a stereotype of a university professor, and somehow that made Sophia feel a little better. "I almost turned around twice on the way here," she admitted as he led her inside. "Completely normal," he assured her. "Everyone feels out of place the first time, but music buildings are just buildings. It's what happens inside them that matters." He took her to a small office lined with books and old vinyl records. Awards and framed photographs covered one wall, showing Professor Rivera with different musicians and orchestras over the years. "So," he said, settling behind his desk, "have you thought about what you might like to play for the showcase?" Sophia opened her folder hesitantly. "I brought some ideas. A Bach prelude I've been practicing, a piece by Einaudi that's less technical but very expressive, and 2 of my own compositions." Professor Rivera nodded encouragingly. "An excellent balance. May I see your compositions?" Sophia handed over the sheets of music she had carefully written out by hand. Her notation wasn't perfect. It had been years since she'd formally written music, but she had done her best to capture what she heard in her head. Professor Rivera studied the pages silently, occasionally humming a phrase or tapping a rhythm on his desk. Finally, he looked up, his expression thoughtful. "These have real potential, Sophia. The melodies are lovely and there's a distinctive voice here, but I think with some development they could be even stronger." "Development?" Sophia asked. "Thematic expansion, harmonic exploration, structural refinement," he explained, then smiled at her confused expression. "Sorry for the jargon. What I mean is, these are beautiful sketches that could become even more beautiful, complete pieces. Would you be open to some guidance?" Sophia nodded eagerly. "That's why I'm here." For the next hour, Professor Rivera played sections of her compositions on the small upright piano in his office, suggesting changes, asking questions about her intentions, and teaching her techniques she had never learned in her youth. Sophia absorbed everything, scribbling notes and trying variations on the piano when invited. "You have an intuitive understanding of melody," he told her as their session was wrapping up. "That can't be taught. The technical aspects of composition, those we can work on together." As Sophia gathered her music, Professor Rivera cleared his throat. "There's something else I'd like to discuss. The university offers scholarships for non-traditional students with exceptional talent. Students like you." Sophia froze. "Scholarships? For what?" "To study here. Music composition specifically." The thought had never crossed Sophia's mind. Go back to school? At 27? To study music? It seemed absurd. "I have a job," she said automatically. "A life. And you could keep that job at least part-time." "Many of our students do," Professor Rivera said gently. "The program is flexible. Think about it, that's all I'm asking." Sophia left the music building with her head spinning. A scholarship to study composition? It was too much to process. She had come here thinking only about the showcase, about pushing herself just a little beyond her comfort zone. This was something else entirely. A complete detour from the life she had settled into. When she arrived at Café Lumière for her afternoon shift, Anton took one look at her face and steered her to a quiet table in the corner. "Tell me everything," he said, placing a cup of tea in front of her. Sophia recounted her meeting with Professor Rivera, ending with the unexpected mention of a scholarship. "It's crazy, right? Me going back to school for music at my age?" Anton leaned back in his chair, considering. "Why is it crazy? People change directions all the time. But I'd have to cut back my hours here. I'd be stretching myself thin." "And for what? A degree in something that might not even lead anywhere practical?" "Ah," Anton nodded. "The practical argument. I know it well." He gestured around the bistro. "Did I ever tell you I was a corporate lawyer before opening this place?" Sophia's eyes widened. "No, you didn't. 14 years at a big firm in the city. Corner office, expense account, the works. He smiled ruefully, and I was miserable every day. My family thought I was having a midlife crisis when I quit to open a bistro. Maybe I was, but it was the best decision I ever made. That's different, Sophia argued. You had savings experience. I'm just a waitress with a hobby. Anton's expression hardened slightly. Is that really how you see your music? As a hobby? The question hit her like a splash of cold water. Was that how she saw it? The hours she spent at the piano now, the melodies that floated through her head all day, the satisfaction when a piece finally came together. It felt like much more than a hobby. I don't know what I think anymore, she admitted. Anton patted her hand. That's okay. Not knowing is often the first step to finding out. That evening, as Sophia played her usual set at the piano, she noticed the bistro was unusually crowded. Tables that typically sat empty on weeknights were filled, and there seemed to be a buzz of anticipation in the air. During her break, Danny sidled up to her at the water station. Your Instagram fame is bringing in customers, she whispered. Anton says business is up 30% since that video went viral. Sophia frowned. It didn't go viral. It just got a few hundred likes. A few thousand now, actually. Danny corrected her. And it's been shared on other platforms. People are coming specifically to hear you play. As if to confirm Danny's words, a young couple approached Sophia tentatively. Excuse me, the woman said. Are you the pianist from the Instagram video? Your playing was beautiful. We drove an hour to hear you in person. Sophia thanked them awkwardly, not knowing what else to say. Throughout her second set, she was acutely aware of phones pointed in her direction, more people recording her without asking. The thought made her hands shake slightly, affecting her performance. After closing, Anton found her sitting alone at the piano, playing softly, a troubled expression on her face. Tough night? He asked. Sophia sighed. I don't know how to feel about all this attention. I never wanted to be, whatever this is, a local sensation, Anton suggested with a small smile. It's not funny, Sophia protested. I can't focus with people filming me. I keep thinking about how I look, if I'm making mistakes, what people will say online. She ran her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them. Playing used to make me feel free. Now it's starting to feel like another kind of trap. Anton sat beside her on the piano bench. Change is always uncomfortable. You're being pulled in new directions, and that's scary. But consider this. Maybe the universe is trying to tell you something. What, that I should abandon my stable job to chase some musical pipe dream? Sophia said bitterly. No, Anton replied calmly, that you don't have to choose. You're allowed to be both Sophia the reliable waitress and Sophia the talented musician. One doesn't erase the other. Sophia thought about Professor Rivera's offer, about the scholarship possibility, about the cramped practice rooms and earnest students she had glimpsed at the university, about the new world that was opening up just a crack, inviting her to step through if she had the courage. I'm meeting with an elderly regular tomorrow, Anton continued when Sophia remained silent. Mrs. Henderson, do you know her? Sophia nodded. The old woman came every Sunday for tea and a scone, always sat by the window, always left a generous tip. She mentioned to me last week that she used to dance ballet. Was quite good. Apparently had offers to join professional companies. Anton's voice grew softer, but her parents didn't approve. Too impractical. So she became an accountant instead. Steady job, good pension. That worked out well for her then, Sophia said. Anton shook his head. She told me it's her greatest regret. Not knowing what might have happened if she'd taken the risk. He stood up, stretching his back. Just something to think about. After Anton left, Sophia remained at the piano, playing softly in the empty bistro. She thought about Mrs. Henderson and her abandoned ballet dreams, about Professor Rivera and the scholarship, about the people driving an hour just to hear her play, and she thought about herself, the Sophia who had existed before she sat down at this piano a month ago, and the Sophia she might become if she dared to embrace this unexpected turn in her life. Tomorrow, she decided she would call Dr. Wu and ask more about the scholarship. Not committing yet, just gathering information, small steps. And she would talk to Anton about adjusting her schedule, creating space for both of her worlds to coexist. For now, though, she simply played in the quiet bistro, the music flowing from her fingers without effort or anxiety, a private moment of clarity before whatever came next. 6 months had passed since Sophia first sat down at the piano in Café Lumière. 6 months of changes, challenges, and unexpected joys. Spring had arrived, bringing with it warm breezes, flowering trees, and the night of the university showcase that Sophia had both dreaded and looked forward to for weeks. Sophia stood backstage at the university's recital hall. Peeking through the curtains at the audience filing in, the space was much larger than she had imagined when she agreed to perform, at least 200 seats, and most were already filled. She spotted Anton in the third row, alongside Danny and several other staff members from the Bistro. They had closed the cafe early to come support her. Nervous? Professor Rivera appeared beside her, looking distinguished in a dark suit. Terrified, Sophia admitted. Her hands were cold and her stomach felt like it was filled with butterflies. What if I mess up? What if I forget the music? What if everyone hates my compositions? All normal fears, he assured her. But remember what we've talked about. This isn't about perfection. It's about sharing something authentic with the audience. Over the past few months, Sophia had met with Professor Rivera weekly, refining her original compositions and improving her technique. She had applied for and received a partial scholarship to begin classes in the fall. Just 2 courses to start, allowing her to continue working at the Bistro part-time. It still felt surreal, like she was living someone else's life. A stagehand approached them. 10 minutes, Ms. Martinez. Sophia nodded, her throat too dry to speak. Professor Rivera squeezed her shoulder encouragingly, before moving away to greet other performers. Sophia closed her eyes and took deep breaths, trying to calm her racing heart. Excuse me. Sophia turned to find an elderly woman standing nearby, leaning on a cane. It took her a moment to recognize Mrs. Henderson, the Sunday regular from the Bistro. Mrs. Henderson, I didn't expect to see you here. Anton told me about your performance, the old woman said with a warm smile. I wouldn't have missed it for the world. Sophia felt touched that the woman had made the effort to come. Thank you. That means a lot. Mrs. Henderson reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet pouch. I brought you something, a tradition in the performing arts. She opened the pouch and tipped a delicate silver bracelet into Sophia's palm. My ballet teacher gave this to me before my first major performance many years ago. I want you to have it now. Sophia stared at the bracelet, speechless. It was simple but beautiful, a thin silver chain with a tiny charm shaped like a musical note. I can't accept this, she protested. It's too precious. Mrs. Henderson closed Sophia's fingers around the bracelet. Indulge an old woman with regrets. I never followed my passion for dance. Watching you embrace your music despite your fears, it gives me joy. The bracelet should be with someone who had the courage I lacked. Tears welled in Sophia's eyes as she fastened the bracelet around her wrist. I'll think of you when I play. Mrs. Henderson patted her cheek gently. You'll be wonderful, dear. Just remember to play from here. She tapped Sophia's chest right above her heart. That's where the real music lives. As the old woman made her way back to the audience, Sophia felt a strange calm settle over her. The fear wasn't gone, but it had transformed into something else, a kind of nervous energy she could channel into her performance. When the stagehand called her name, Sophia walked onto the stage with her head held high. The lights were bright, making it difficult to see faces in the audience, but she could feel their presence, their attention focused on her. She sat at the grand piano, much larger and more responsive than the Bistro's upright, and adjusted the bench. For a moment she froze, overwhelmed by the situation. Then she felt the weight of Mrs. Henderson's bracelet on her wrist and remembered the woman's words. Play from the heart. She took a deep breath and began. The first piece, Bach's Prelude in C major, flowed from her fingers with more confidence than she had expected. As she played, the audience faded away, and it was just Sophia and the music having a conversation only they could understand. When she moved on to the Einaudi piece, she allowed herself to sway slightly with the emotional melody, no longer worried about how she looked or what others might think. Then came the moment she had both anticipated and feared, her own compositions. She had worked for months refining them with Professor Rivera's guidance, expanding the simple melodies into more complex pieces while maintaining their emotional core. As she began to play the first one, a piece she had titled Morning Light, inspired by the golden glow that filled the Bistro at dawn, she felt a strange sense of vulnerability. This wasn't someone else's music she was interpreting. These were her own thoughts, feelings, and experiences translated into sound. But as the piece progressed, she saw heads nodding in the audience, faces softening. They were connecting with her music, understanding it. When she finished the first composition, the applause was warm and genuine. Sophia smiled, her confidence growing, and moved directly into her final piece. She had titled it, Notes from the Bistro, a musical journey that captured her transformation over the past 6 months. It began tentatively, with simple, hesitant phrases that gradually built in complexity and confidence, mirroring her own journey. As she played the final section, a triumphant, joyful melody that represented her acceptance of her dual identity as both waitress and musician, she felt tears sting her eyes. This was her story, told without words, and she was sharing it with a room full of strangers who somehow didn't feel like strangers anymore. When the final notes faded, there was a moment of silence. Then the audience erupted in applause. Sophia stood and bowed, her cheeks flushed with emotion and exhilaration. As she looked out at the crowd, she could see Anton and Danny on their feet, clapping wildly. Mrs. Henderson was wiping tears from her eyes, and Professor Rivera was beaming with pride from the side of the stage. After the showcase ended, Sophia found herself surrounded by well-wishers, other performers, audience members, even a local music critic who asked for her contact information. It was overwhelming, but in the best possible way. "You were incredible," Anton said when he finally reached her, pulling her into a warm hug. "I knew you had it in you from that first night at the Bistro. I couldn't have done it without you giving me the chance," Sophia replied, her voice thick with gratitude. "So what happens now, college girl?" Danny asked teasingly. "Are you leaving us behind for the glamorous world of academia?" Sophia shook her head. "Never. The Bistro is still my home." She touched the silver bracelet on her wrist. "But I'm learning that home can expand. There's room for both worlds in my life." Later that night, long after the audience had dispersed and the concert hall had emptied, Sophia returned to Café Lumière. Anton had given her a key months ago so she could practice in the mornings, and tonight she felt drawn back to where everything had started. The Bistro was dark and quiet, chairs stacked on tables, the espresso machine silent. Sophia moved to the piano in the corner and sat down, running her fingers lightly over the keys of the old upright. After the magnificent grand piano at the recital hall, this instrument felt small and slightly worn. But it was the piano that had changed her life. She began to play softly, improvising a gentle melody that came to her in the moment. As she played, she thought about the strange, winding path that had led her here, from reluctant pianist to scholarship student with a promising future in composition. None of it would have happened if Paolo, the regular pianist, hadn't fallen ill. None of it would have happened if Anton hadn't encouraged her to play that first night. Life was full of these turning points, these moments when a small decision could lead to unexpected destinations. 6 months ago, Sophia had been comfortable but unfulfilled, stuck in a routine that offered security but little joy. Now her life was more complicated, more challenging, and infinitely richer. As dawn began to break, soft light filtering through the Bistro's windows, Sophia finished her improvisation with a gentle chord. In a few hours she would be back here with her apron on, serving coffee and taking orders. But she would also be working on new compositions in her head, planning for her fall classes, looking forward to wherever this musical path might lead. The Bistro was coming alive around her, familiar and dear, yet somehow new in the morning light. Sophia closed the piano gently and stood up, ready to embrace both the day ahead and the future beyond. A future with more notes to discover, more music to create, and more stories to tell.